Valley. And we are so delighted that Beth Ireland, wood turner, woodworker, sculptor, instrument maker extraordinaire. So.
Okay, so you pretty much said, I'm just going to do this as a casual welcome to my shop and see what I'm doing here. I moved to Florida 2 years ago, but I've actually probably only been here a year and a couple of months, and I've been renovating a house and a workshop. So I'm kind of in the middle of that. So I'm going to share with what I've done so far and just kind of tell you what I'm doing. So Lakota, I'm going to go to this camera. I'm just going to start here, and this is a new addition to my shop that I've built since I've gotten back in March. My practice has been really crazy since the COVID, because I'm basically just wake up and do whatever I want to do unless a job comes in. So I've been working on this guitar. It's a tenor guitar, and the finish is curing right now. I have lots of, I've been working on scraping patterns through paint and working with this beautiful ambrosia maple that I brought back from Maine. This is a typical in my shop. I just like try things all the time. I consider my shop the exploratorium. So for instance, I'll work a day on the legs, possible legs for a table, and just do a ton of samples. Or I might have this like kind of spalted wood that I got from the end of a log, and I'll just look at it and say, oh, wow, that's so interesting. It's like butterflies. And then take it to this place where it's like this butterfly collection. But then I get tired of it and say, no, I don't know if I want to work on that yet. And one of the major things I've worked on is I've enclosed this shop, which was this was a carport on the side of my shop. And I've been working on crossbows, which has been kind of an interest of mine. An article is coming out in Woodcraft magazine in February. But these are some of the crossbows I've been working on, and I just really see them as an extension of my instrument making. They incorporate the same thing, the curves and the shaping. It's difficult to make the bow, and so I like working with the wood and trying to figure out how you, I'm sorry, I just probably gave somebody motion sickness there. So I've been working on those. And then just in a typical week, this week, I've been working on, oh, what about these hangers for instruments? So I've just been messing around with different hangers for instruments. And then ongoing, I'm always carving a spoon from wood from my yard. I don't sell these, but. And then during COVID, I've been designing chairs. So here are 2 chairs that I've been designing. So as you can see, I'm very eclectic. I'm just kind of working on mostly organizing. You can see I'm getting all organized here. And then this is my main shop. And it's not that big, but it's a come in the door. And I try to keep everything on carts so I can open up space, because I never know what I'm going to be working on. I'm in Florida, so you can see the ceiling is spray foam insulated, so it's always nice and cool. Here's my lathe. Currently, this is the project I'm working on. I have a job. I'm carving these acorn newel cap tops, and it's really been a really brutal job because they're out of oak. So here they are lined up, and I'm just working on them little by little. Right now they're pretty much in the roughed out stage, and I'm finishing the tops, but it will take another week to work on these. Up here are instruments in process, different instruments that I'm making. And I just pulled these out because they were sitting in the shop, but this is very typical. I have hundreds of these in cases, and it's me just taking my architectural woodworking, which I do every day, and transforming it. Like, how can I transform these techniques into something that is not a recognizable object? Here are some instruments. This is what I've been really working on lately. I've been, since grad school in 2011, I've really been I write a lot, and I write essays of my travels and trips and funny stories. And so I wanted to somehow put that into my work. So here on this guitar, for instance, this guitar is made out of, it has a birch neck, and this birch is a tree I planted when I was 12. I got it on Arbor Day and planted it, and it grew right in the middle of the lawn, and it bugged my mother. And when I was 40, she cut it down and turned it into boards. So my tool cabinet is made out of it and different things. So this is an essay. I've developed a symbolic alphabet. So each symbol, one symbol represents an A or a B or a D or whatever. And so this is an actual essay called Arbor Day. So it's about how this guitar was made. And, it starts out in 1968, and it goes on and tells about the planting of the tree and my parents getting really ticked off, and that it actually grew and it was in their way all the time. So anyway, these are the things that I'm working on. And this is, I've designed and made a mold, and this shape you're seeing is a guitar mold that I'm making right now, a series of guitars with. I use the lathe a lot because I'm a wood turner. So that's my lathe. You can see it's pretty big. So it allows me to make really big things. So this guitar is made from a segmented turning, and then the neck is turned on the lathe. So I like to utilize the lathe also in my instrument making. So that's just a little tour of my shop. So does anybody have any questions about that?
If anyone has questions, you can put them right in the chat.
Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this camera, and I'm going to turn to this one, and I'm just going to show you some of the other, some of the things that I've been working on. Can you see this, Lakota?
Yeah, we've got that screen spotlighted.
All right, good. Okay. So I've been working.
Oh, we have a question.
Oh, sure.
Jerry wants to know what type of lathe you use.
I use a one-way, and it's called a 2436, but I have an extension that allows me to turn 8.5 feet. And I got it in like 2005, and it's like an extension of my body. I just love that lathe.
Do you do demos for wood turning clubs?
Yes, all the time.
And then we have another question that had come in earlier from Rick Wortman. Beth, you have collaborated with numerous artists from a wide range of fields. I've participated in both your fine metals and blacksmithing workshops. Is there a field where you believe that the collaboration has been most successful and least successful? And is there another field that you would like to collaborate for the first time?
I like to collaborate in every field. I think that's the fun part about being a craftsperson and an artist. I often tell my students, if you want to be a better turner, don't take classes in turning. I mean, learn to turn, but go take a course in metalsmithing or take a class in ceramics, because they're going to give you an insight that you can bring back to your turning that is just going to make your work different than everybody else's. When you only look at wood turning books, you only come up with a variety of what other people have already done in wood turning. But when you go to ceramics and you try to make something look like a ceramic that you really love, or you look at, I love archaeological artifacts, it's going to change what turning is. Like it's going to make your work really stand out.
So
Did that
true.
answer? Hi, by the way, hi, Rick.
Hi.
Oh, he's joined us. He had sent that in earlier. So you have some of those turned bowls, don't you?
I have I'm going to show them to you right now, like to kind of show that I work a lot in different ways. Like I work sometimes from collaboration, and I'm lucky enough to be invited to places like Emma Lake and Echo Lake and different artist collaboratives, which make it really fun, because the whole purpose of going to spend a week or a weekend is to not do your normal work, but do work with other people's work, which I find is really helpful for you in your own work. But I also find that what drives my work often is need. And for instance, in these highlighted tea strainers, I went to, we can come down, Lakota, to the table here. Here. So I went to the Center for Furniture Craftsmanship, and I teach this 2-month class in the winter. And I was having some arthritis problems. So I got this bulk tea, which is called stinging nettle tea, but I couldn't figure out how to strain it into my cup. So of course I said, oh, I'm a turner, I can figure this out. So after many, trying different things, I came up with this object, which I love because I love kind of this archaeological rustic look, but this is the actual one I've been using for 2 years. And then this year, somebody at my house needed coffee, and I don't drink coffee. Sometimes I drink coffee, like maybe a couple times a month. So I just started doing this, and this has been great, because this particular one, you just put a cup of coffee in and pour it through. And this is maple, which is naturally antibacterial, which is awesome. And then you just pull this out and dump it into your thing. And what I love about it is how the coffee starts to change the color at the end grain of the piece. It actually starts to stain it. And so I've been loving these. So I started making this series of them. And it started, very, of course, with me, it always starts very functional. So here are some functional ones that I've made, that they're flat here, so they just rest on your cup. I make lots of different sizes, and I make them from natural wood. Like this one is actually from an avocado tree. So here, this is avocado. It's this beautiful kind of orange color in a smaller shape. And then after time passes, they start to become ridiculous. Like this is totally functional, like this could function, but I really made it as what I call a contemplative object. It's really an object that you would just look at. And I find that happens to me quite a bit. I start making a functional object, and then I start really enjoying the form of the object, and it transforms into something else.
So we did put in the chat the link to Beth's collection. She's got many of these tea strainers and some other items for sale through the gallery. And we're also going to give you a special coupon code for joining us. It is good for anything on the website, but we hope you'll make a purchase of Beth's work, and it is good till the end of the month. So I think, Lakota, it's Meet Artist 10. We'll put that in there. So anyway, continue on, Beth.
Okay. So you never really see me at a crafts fair, because that's not how I function. I don't make a line of work. So I've made a ton of these because I loved working out the form, and I've written some articles about this. If you were a wood turner, that this is turned in this direction like a bowl, and then it's turned in this direction like a spindle, and then it's held like this to finish it off. So I'm interested in all the different ways that you hold these things to make them. And then once I'm tired of that, I move on to the next thing. So everything I have that I'm selling here are really just prototypes that I've been working on over time. And they're just I'm ready to work on other things. So these are the tea strainers. So some of them I carve. So these are like little kind of chip carving into the surface. Some of them are burnt. So this is using a professional wood burner to make patterns that burns patterns. And like this one is a burnt pattern. So some are very plain. This is just a very plain. They have no finish on them because you don't want the tea to get the flavor of a wax, or you don't want a poly with your food. So they're left raw, maple or avocado.
We've had a question come in, Beth.
Sure.
Are they all one piece of wood, and which woods are antibacterial?
They're all one piece of wood, and they're all antibacterial, because that's the only one. I only use woods that are not affected by the tannins of the tea. So that's the other thing that happens to me. I get interested in that kind of thing. Like, if you're making a tea strainer, you really need to start knowing about teas. So then, of course, I get really interested in tea, and now I drink all different kinds of chais and teas because my work got me interested in that thing. So I'm going to move it. If anybody has a question, I'll answer it, but I was going to move on to my next piece.
Any tea questions out there while we're still on the subject?
Best Christmas gift ever. These are two pieces that I've worked on I really just love this. Here in Florida, we don't really get the wood that you get in New England, like I used to get in Boston or in Maine. So every year when I go to Maine, our class buys a couple of logs, and I get to turn the maple and birch and cherry. And I love the wet wood because I love that it turns oval. You turn it on the lathe, but then it dries into an oval shape, and it gets a little wonky on the sides. And I really love it because it has that feel of an archaeological object that you dug out of the ground. I'm really interested in archaeology. So I look at a lot of baskets. So these are kind of influenced by baskets, but they're really just burnt patterns. And I'm not an OCD, anal retentive person. I'm a free-flowing kind of person. So I really don't even, sometimes when I'm doing these, I just pick up the piece and start, and I have no idea what I'm going to do. It's just kind of, for me, a meditative act of just starting to decorate and burn patterns, and then it just becomes what it's going to become. Like this probably started around the rim here, and then each row I just thought, let me try this. I'm going to try this. I like to paint in black on the interior so that it puts your focus on the exterior. So that's what you're really looking at. But on this one, you can actually see the mineral stains coming through the wood, coming through the burning, which I really love.
Beth, are you able to hold that any closer to the camera?
So it's a burned pattern, and it's a black interior.
Does the wobbliness of the dried wet turn piece ever a problem for you?
No, I never find it to be a problem. You mean a problem like how it sits on the table?
Maybe. Rick, you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Rick, ask the question.
And Julie, I didn't forget about your question, but I'm going to come back to it. So I have a note. Okay, well, maybe we'll come back to Rick's.
Okay, then go to Julie's.
Well, Julie's is off the topic of bowls.
That's okay.
Okay, so she wants to know if you sell the legs with the architectural end. It looked like a club. Perfect for keeping next to your door for self-defense, but beautiful.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I'm doing an article on how to make those for Fine Woodworking magazine. It's coming out in February. And so I have a lot of them around the shop. I have a lot of clubs around.
I think, yes, Rick is saying that it wobbles. Is it?
Oh, so if I wobble, I just flatten the bottom. After I know it's totally dry, I would just go and just totally flatten the bottom. But I myself am a wobbler. Like I often make bowls that are totally round. So they're just like this. They're just wobbling because they have no base. I just never find that to be a problem. But functionally, if it's something I really needed to hold something, I would just actually take a hand plane to the bottom and make sure it's flat.
Rick says he doesn't like solid bowls that wobble. Patty wants to know, what kind of paint do you use on the inside?
I use milk paint. So they're not made, you probably wouldn't put liquid in this. I wouldn't mean this to be something you would eat out of, whereas, let's see. Whereas this is just on my shelf, I make cups that I actually drink out of, and they're maple, and I might use milk paint on the exterior, but I use a combination of walnut oil and beeswax liquefied that I pour inside, and it clogs the end grain so that no water will drip out. And I use this to drink in here in my shop all the time. So you can make a functional piece that you're going to drink out of. You either have to char the interior to seal the end grain, or you have to wax it and clog it, basically.
We have another question. Thank you, Rick, for asking all these questions. We love them. What about India ink for black interiors?
I bet that would be great. You still wouldn't drink out of it because of probably the chemicals, but India ink could be great. And I know a lot of people like John Jordan and Mark Gardner like to use Fibeens Marine Core Black, or it's a really dark shoe leather dye, and it gives you a really intense black surface.
I think I've used that on my shoes, on leather shoes. They make great dyes. Fran wants to know how you wash your cup.
I just wash it with warm water. I just wash it out like I wash my other cups. You could put soap in it and just rinse it out. It's pretty much with the wax in it. It's like, you know how a salad bowl starts to, it started as, it starts as a natural bowl, or I don't put finish on my salad bowls inside in my house. And then just from the oil of what's in your food, it starts to season the surface, and it just keeps it getting better and better and better. And so I just wash it like a regular thing. I don't put anything in a dishwasher.
And I think a good rule of thumb too with wood and like metal, like maybe like forged utensils and stuff, is to dry them right away also.
Yeah, dry them. Mm-hmm. What you have to worry about with a cutting board or anything wood is wood is like paper. So if you put a piece of paper on a table and you put a sponge and dampen one side, it will curl up. That's exactly what will happen to wood. That's why if you have a cutting board and it's curled, you need to dampen both sides every time you wash it so that it's drying equally all around.
That's a good tip. Well, show us more bowls. I love these.
Okay. All right. So every winter when I'm in Maine, I do what's called a story bowl. So I take one bowl and I just start putting little symbols on it that tell a story about something that happened during my time, that particular time I was there. And so these are like just these little wood burn bowls with kind of these stories of what's going on and what people were talking about and what's happening. Or this is actually my friend Martha, who's a carpenter, and she got a new dog while I was in Maine. And so she was so excited, she brought the dog to visit. So I did a little panel about them. This was while I was there, I met this woman who wrote a book. Um, I forgot the title of it, but it was about snails and the life of a snail compared to an illness she had. Um, and so she was really fascinating. And so this is, I went and had tea with her a couple of times. So each of these just tells one more thing that I was doing. So I call them story bowls. This is one I did after I had just done a big long traveling trip. So this one is of the highway, shows the highway and all the different people that I met along the highway. I collect Native American story bracelets, like this one that's on my wrist. And each of these tells a story. This one is about a bear hunt. And so I love these objects that have stories incorporated into them. So that's inspired this work for me. And this is about me traveling and drawing. I was teaching some bookmaking and some drawing. My other passion is making books. And so I do a lot of bookmaking. And when I'm teaching kids, I like to teach them to make books, and then they make a pen and they write in the book. So it's to try to empower them to write and make things. So those are my story bowls. And these are very not planned. It's easier for me probably than a lot of people because I actually graduated in 1979 with a degree in illustration. So I've just always been a person who draws. I have zillions of sketchbooks and I just draw as easily as I do anything else. So I never plan these out. I just start drawing like I would as if they were paper in my sketchbook. And I'm actually working on a series inside of wooden books that are, I've developed a binding, and the pages are like a eighth to a quarter inch pieces of wood. And I just draw in them as if they're a sketchbook. So they're like little drawing books.
So we've got some questions and comments.
Yes.
Your art has a primitive quality to it. Is this purposeful stylistically, or is it your natural tendency?
It's not my natural tendency. Well, in college, I drew like Rembrandt. Like I can draw your portrait as perfectly like a photograph. But I realized the work that really moves me, that I love, that I've looked at over the years, that work is always archaeology, like the symbols. I'm just like fascinated I just went to a show in Boston before the pandemic about Nubia, and of all of the symbols that are on the Nubian bowls and how much information is on them. So I've taken many courses in archaeology, and that work has really inspired how I draw on these pieces. Because I always think this piece is going to get buried in the sand or in the dirt because of some apocalyptic something. And 1,000 years from now, somebody's going to uncover this and go, what? What's that about? And I love that. Like, for instance, as a carpenter, my work, I've always been an architectural carpenter, woodworker, wood turner. And so I replaced newel posts all the time in Boston when I was in Boston. And I would go take an old newel post off that was put in 1700s, and there's always a letter inside of it, or a paper, or something written about the people who made this thing and when they did it. And I just love that. And so in my work, I always do that. I put a secret message inside things that people don't know all the time. That is historic.
So another question from Carl, that one bowl, it's like the marquee, yes, that one that your hand's on. How did you get that shape?
Oh, this is an article I've just written for American Wood Turner. It'll be coming out February, I think. And it's about how to take the center out of a bowl and put it back together to make it elliptical. So you'll see it like in the next piece that I'm bringing up. I do it quite a bit. It's something I've messed around with a lot. and I take the center out, and I figured out a way to do it so that you're totally even on both sides and you can put it back together equally. And either glue it, or sometimes I like to stitch it like this, do stitching. So I have like a zillion of these, and I'm just fascinated, and I like them more than the round bowl. And if we went into my house right now, you would just see these oval things everywhere. And so I have no idea what I'm doing with them. That happens to me a lot. I get kind of focused on a shape or something, and then all of a sudden one morning I wake up and it's clear to me what it's going to be, and then they get used as something. I have a slow process.
So I think Pam was asking about the same, more or less the same question. So Pam, if your question is different, please type it again in the chat. Well, Ruth wants to know when you sleep.
You know what? People often ask me this question. I mean, think about this. I live alone. I am very curious. I'm a very curious person. It's the way that I express myself in the world is through this work. So I just really spend a lot of time teaching people. And when I teach people, I make things, and demoing to people, and I make things. And then my time in the winter, I'm teaching, but it's really an incubator for me because I have the whole evening, every evening, there's nothing to do in Maine, especially this year, right? So I spend the whole evening just messing around with those materials that I have. So basically, this is my job. I mean, think about this. I've just spent the last 39, 40 years in a shop from 9 till 6 or 7, and sometimes weekends. So it's just what I do. And most people, of course, have a family, they have a different job. They're not standing in their shop all day long. And also I'm a production worker. So say when I make these tea strainers, I'm always thinking about how would I them quickly? Like, how do I take away the steps so that something can be made well, but made quickly? So you'll see, for instance, if I'm carving these acorns out here, the first one takes me a day, but the second one takes me not a day. And by the time I get to the fourth one, it's a half a day until then I get to the last one. And then it's, 2 hours. So production allows you to work quickly and make many things.
Well, Julie,
but I don't sleep very well.
How many pieces of art do you create per week?
Oh God. I don't know if you'd call it art. My sister often walks in. She comes to visit for coffee and she goes, "What? What is it?" And I say, "It's art." But like, for instance, right now in my dining room, I opened up a big room so that it's a living room. It's all open, living room, dining room, kitchen. And so from my living room, I didn't want to look at the wall above where the stove and the counter is. I didn't want to see kitchen cabinets. So I made a wall of cabinets that are in a rectangle, and I made the doors into a painting. So when you're in the living room, you think it's a painting, but it's really the cabinet doors. So, I just work on stuff like that all the time.
Shelly, that bowl that you've got with the stitching there, she wants to know if the stitching is seen inside the bowl.
Yes. I think I put a picture on your site of the stitching inside the bowl. I have 2 of these. This one, it's less pronounced. Like you'll see kind of less pronounced of the stitching. And
is that because you're using the milk paint after you've stitched?
Yes. Yeah, I do it afterwards. But this one is very much, you see the stitching. I wanted the stitching to stand out, and then it's milk painted over. So it's very stitchy. Now, this is a new technique I'm working on that I can't tell you the technique, but basically I'm doing raku. So I put a resist on the surface of these, and then I have a source of smoke, and they sit for 8 hours at a very low temperature with smoke coming across them. And so the color is formed by smoke. And then the resist, the white you see here, is the natural wood. So this is a series that I am currently working on.
And what kind of material thread are you using for the stitching?
I make books a lot, so I always use waxed linen.
Pam wanted to know where you are in Florida.
St. Petersburg.
And
I'm in St. Petersburg, Florida, with my new shop here, with 2 lathes for students when the pandemic is over, if anybody wants to come to Florida and learn how to turn and do some work.
we had a
I just had
question.
to put that plug in, Brianne.
Yes, good, good. I don't know if this was rhetorical or serious, but Rick asked about when you were talking about your bowl being uncovered. When it's uncovered, what will the finder think about our culture?
They're going to think, what? They're going to just say, what I love is in archaeology, you just see that people look at this object, like all these people, like for instance, the Mayan Codex, which is a book in the Mayan culture. Everybody just like looked at this book and they said, what does it say? Nobody could figure out what it said. And the greatest minds of our country who've gone to Harvard and Yale and Princeton were looking at this book. And the 12-year-old son of one of the archaeologists says, it says blah, 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 look. Because we make everything too difficult, right? And when it's really way simpler than we think it is. So that's why I make these drawings. It's going to be, Rick, when they dig this up, they're going to say, oh, look, that person was driving a wagon with pencils, and oh, there's a highway that's a snake with many little people around. That's what they're going to say. Oh, they took a road trip. Maybe that's what they'll say.
Well, Carol's ready for the road trip down to your studio.
Okay, good. Tell her I also have an apartment I rent so that anybody who takes lessons can stay on site. And dark and stormies are served on the patio.
You're really making this enticing.
Oh, did I mention it's 75 degrees outside my studio right now?
It's really cold here. Okay. Larry wants to know, for the raku style smoked finish, is there a coat of another type of finish, or is it as a preservative?
Nope. It's just right from the raku smoked surface. There's no finish on it.
Well, Carol's bringing baked goods and Patty's ready to come down. And Pam wants to know, have you read Macaulay's Motel of the Mysteries?
No, but it sounds great.
Wesley asks, can you recommend a source for learning the ukulele bracing patterns?
Bracing patterns. Oh, interesting. Okay. I find that all these instruments, basically, you're just getting you need to understand what is bracing. And I went and took a course with Taylor Guitars, and they've just invented a new thing called V-bracing, which in the act of taking this class, even though I had done bracing before, I was like, oh, that's what bracing is. And it really taught me a lot about the purpose of bracing. So once you know the purpose of something, you can design your own bracing on a ukulele or a guitar or a strummer. It doesn't matter. So I highly recommend reading anything you can about Taylor's V-bracing, because it will really explain a lot about what bracing is and how it should be. But the book that I like to use for all things is Jonathan Kincaid's How to Make a Guitar. It's a picture book. I'm much better looking at the pictures. And he's really great. And he'll explain about guitar bracing, but it's the same on a ukulele.
So Pam says that the book, The Motel of the Mysteries, is about how relics are interpreted, and it's very funny. So
Oh
it
my
sounds like you
God.
would love it.
Okay, I'd love that.
Carl says, some of us CFC intensive alum want you to do a 2-week alum class in Maine. Are you interested?
Of course. But of course. I know. I actually just, a lot of the alums just wrote me. I actually got 3 texts this week that said, could there be intensive 2? Like, could it be the next step, like really intensive or something like more intensive? It's hard to learn 38 years worth of stuff in 2 months, right? So, yes, Carl, yes.
So do you have more things to show us?
Yes. Okay, now these are some older pieces, but I just like have had them sitting there and I pulled them out. And I especially love them. These are sculptures. And they're, if you look at the surface, you'll see that they're segmented. So there's many, many little pieces of wood that are glued together like bricks. And this was inspired, I drive quite a bit and I'm traveling quite a bit. So I'm always blown away when I hit that prairie or that place and you see these 2 big, towers. And this wind is blowing the smoke from these, whether it's a electric coal burning thing. And so the really funny story about this is that I got asked to do this show called Reaction. And I was like, I got the email and I read the thing and it said, we'd like everybody to, would you do a piece responding to the words reaction? And I was like, oh my God, yeah, I totally know what I would do. I've been seeing these pieces. And I like ran down to my shop and I made like 6 of these in different ways to try to get this thing. And then when the show actually, when I got ready to send them, went through the email to find out the address and it said, the pieces must be no bigger than 6 inches by 6 inches. And if you can imagine, I not only did these, I was so excited about this idea. I did a bandsaw box that's an entire factory with like columns. So it's a box and then it has like the smokestacks are boxes. And then these were with it. Then these kinds of pieces were with it. And these are actually hollowed containers. And you probably can't see it, but it's painted electric blue. So the idea was that it was going to be like a, nuclear reaction. So, but even though it did not fit in for this show, it got me really interested in this, the use of segmenting to stack to make forms. So after this piece, I made a bunch of kind of tall sculptures that are not turned, but they're just sculptural forms that are just my scrap wood segmented and stacked in different shapes, working as I go and then ground down. One of the pieces is at the Center for Art and Wood. You might have seen it.
And what did you make that smokestack out of?
This is sanded plexi. So it's a sanded 1/4 inch thick sanded plexiglass. So it gives you this kind of smoky look. It's something I used a lot in architecture for screens to build screening, build a barrier between office, things, cubicles and stuff like that. So I love these and these are not finished. They're basswood and I just love the white, beautiful feel of basswood. And I like that the color is so bland and yet there's just a little variation between pieces. So you really get that feeling of bricks being stacked up to form an object. Any questions about those?
Questions? I love those. They're so fun.
Okay.
I love also how they're supposed to be 6 inches tall.
I know, is that funny? This is what happens to me when I was thinking reaction, nuclear reaction. And I just like, that's how I am. If it's like something hits me, I just run and start doing it. But other times people ask me to do a show and I'm like, what? And I just like walk around with this word, whatever it is I'm supposed to do, for a month before I actually start really thinking about what it is. So I work in many different ways. Okay, here's a sculptural piece. And you can't really see this one so good. I have to kind of come back here. And this piece, I had this beautiful holly. This is holly that is so white. It's from Fairmount Park in Philadelphia. And I just love this holly. And I was just working on this idea. I was doing a bunch of pieces that were about tools and these objects in your shop. Like I was making, and I was interested in this idea of reliquaries. So this is my like kind of beautiful bolt, a bolt that's been sanded and it's smooth and beautiful. And this top is very bolt-like. And this piece comes apart and it's pieces. And it's really a reliquary to a drill bit. So I'm interested always in using my architectural turning as part of what I'm doing. So this drill bit is it's like a barley twist, but it's a drill bit. And so I make really if you went into my house right now, you would just say, do you live here or is this a gallery? Because I have like my shirts from Goodwill. I have 5, and as they wear out, I just get another shirt. So basically I can live in my van. So I have very few personal objects, but my entire house's purpose is to just store the things that I'm making. And I never feel like I get to a point where I want to, I have to make 20 things to make the thing that's going to the gallery. Really, that's what it comes down to. I make 20 to come up with one. And so my house is filled with the 19 leftover pieces from every project I've ever done, really. Okay, so that's pretty much what I had on my for you guys to show you.
Questions? I know you all have questions. So you can put them in the chat.
Okay, there are no
please.
drugs involved. I know you're asking that. Do you take drugs? No, no drugs.
Well, Therese says they're absolutely delightful and inspiring. Julia wants to know, why isn't your shop messy?
Oh, because I cleaned it last night. It was a total wreck. And I thought, oh, I'm having company. I better clean. And so I vacuumed. I actually try to keep it it's so small, I have to keep it organized or I trip. So really it's just, I like once a week I vacuum all the floors. I sweep every night, but I vacuumed last night.
Renee,
this piece, I found this piece, which is interesting. This actual.
I'm going to answer Renee's question really quickly because she wants to know if this program is being recorded. And so the answer is yes. Right now it's on Facebook Live. So right at the end of this, you'll be able to get that through our Facebook page, but we will also put it on YouTube. And I will send you all a follow-up email on Monday. It sometimes goes into spam, but you will get an email with the link from me. So go ahead, Beth.
I'm very material oriented. So like this happens to me a lot. So I was making those 2 chairs. I made 3 chairs. And then I thought, oh, I want the seat to be soft. And so then I do a lot of research about materials. So this base is actually 1-inch thick industrial felt, which is going to be the seats of my new stools. I've designed some new stools. And so this is the first time I've had it unrolled because the shop was clean. I thought, oh, I'm going to unroll that and see how it looks because it's going to be great as this seat. And then I thought, oh, this would be great to put all my stuff on for this, for the Peters Valley thing. So I keep lots of crazy materials around, like over on my counter over there, I have, 1/4-inch bungee cord, which I'm going to weave on and try weaving that on one of the seats for a little bit of springing. I keep industrial felt around whenever I see crazy materials that I love the material, even if I have no purpose for it, I always buy it because I know it will become incorporated into whatever I'm doing.
So Julia wants to know what your best organizing piece of advice is.
Organizing in what way? Like organizing tools?
I don't know. Julia, you have to specify. In the meantime, Rick wants to know what does the felt come in different colors?
Yes. Oh my God, it's so beautiful. And it comes in different thicknesses. This is 1-inch thick, but it comes 1/4-inch thick and it comes in all different colors. It's beautiful. Okay, Julia, I see your question. Okay. Now, Dixie and I have been talking about this. Dixie's here, and we've been texting back and forth and talking about trying to get organized because now I have this opportunity. This shop is smaller than my shop in Boston because I'm not doing so much production work. So I don't really need as much space. I didn't think. But so I was reading, what is his name? Christian Birchhoff in Fine Woodworking. And he said these words: if your tools have a place that's easy for you to put them, like for instance, if your tools, and I find this is really true for me about like this rack, that I use this tool all the time and I don't even have to look. I just go behind me and go like this and it's back. So putting things away isn't really hard, right? Like all measuring tools go here. I know what's on these magnets. And so I like to use magnets a lot. And some things you don't want to use magnets. Like if you think it's going to magnetize the steel in a way that's not going to be good, you don't want that magnetized. Then like I make wooden holders. Like for some of my wood turning tools, I have wooden holders, although I do put some on magnets because some people don't like that because the tool becomes magnetized and then clanks onto your tool rest. It doesn't really bother me that much, but so I think having everything out. And then I did just do this. I'm trying to do this when this is all done everywhere. Here's my dream. I made this, I'm making drawers. So each of these drawers holds a certain carving tool so that I can just come over and say, oh, here are my number 5s, right? And I can just put it back when it's done and everything is organized. So I find it helps me. That has really been helping me keep my shop way cleaner. Like in my drill press, I made a cabinet that rolls over the base of my drill press. And I put drawers in it with trays. So one tray is brad point and one tray is, regular drill bits and one tray is Forstner bits. And you think it's you think, oh, what good is that? But it really helps you when you're working. You put things back and you don't have them sitting on your workbench and then they roll off and get ruined or get lost. So I'm really finding that advice of putting it out so you can see it and put it back, like especially your tools like your sander and your skill saw and all of that. I think having it out so you just grab it and put it back and you don't have to put it in a box and roll up the cord and, it really does make sense for me. It's making sense.
So 2 questions to follow that up. Where do you get the magnets? And also where do you get the felt?
I just went online and looked up industrial felt until I found one that was the price I wanted, because it's all made, I believe, in Sweden, or it's Scandinavian. So it's all the same product. So just find the cheapest price. Oh, and where do I get the magnets? Have a freight. Have a freight when you can get these magnets, and they're the strongest magnets I have ever used, and they're awesome. And they cost, when they're having one of their sales, you can get them for $3 or something, and they're just great.
I bought them on Amazon too, but I think yours look a little better than mine. And we're
Oh,
cheap.
they're really strong. I bought some on Amazon and some at IKEA, and I've actually taken them down and given them away because they just do not have enough suck.
So Ken wants to know, what is your one piece of advice for a craftsperson to make a living at their craft?
Interesting. I ask this question all the time at CFC because I've always made a living as a craftsperson. And here's my advice. The people that you work for often have no idea what woodworking is or what craft is. So return their phone call immediately. Keep them in the loop, like these people from my Acorn. I take a picture every day or every couple of days and say, this is where I am, and I educate them. Because what's happening now is that people don't know the difference between an IKEA thing and something made by one of us. And so you educate them, and as soon as they're educated, then they're like, oh, I see the difference and I really need that. So stay in touch with them, or always return a phone call. Keep everybody in the loop, and work with them. Like, I see lots of people, my colleagues, go to a client and say, what do you need? Oh, I need a table. And they say, okay, I'll design that. It has to be my table. I won't make a table like you want. And my feeling as a young craftsperson was, I want to be working. And I want to be working at my craft every day. So if somebody shows me something at Crate and Barrel and it's not really my style, I don't care. I'd rather be working. And so I make that table. And in the making of that table, which is not something I would usually do, I learn an incredible amount about something I wouldn't have done because it's not my, path. And that has really just taught me so much. So I make for people, I make these things for myself, but I make those things in my workaday world for people, and for what they want. And then you have them for life because they know you're attentive to them and they know that you're thinking about them. And so that has always been my guide. You would rather be, I just think you can't be a prima donna about this, especially right now in the time that we're in. Just get out there. Like my friend Nick, who I work with all the time, he's a retired fireman and he's just learning every job he does. I take every job. If a job is like really far above my abilities, I'm like, okay, I can do that. And then I go find out how to do it. And in the act of achieving that job, which is so far above my abilities, my skill level just rose to that level. And I become more and more skilled. So just be fearless, because there's always somebody who can show you how to do it, and you can always figure out how to do it. My first baluster job, I got a lathe from Harbor Freight. I really wanted to know how to turn. And I just there was nobody to teach me because it was in the early 80s. There was no one to teach you except, the Sears catalog tool thing said, oh, use this tool like this. And so somebody called me for a job and said, could you make 25 balusters? And I said, yes. And I knew I would lose money, but I knew it took me 48 to make 25 because I screwed so many up. But in that screwing up, I really learned what are the elements of making a baluster. And then my next job, I made money. And my next job, I really made money. And by the time 20 years had passed, it was really profitable. And I could buy a house from learning to do it. So So I always challenge myself above my abilities because that's the only way you're ever going to rise up.
I love that. And Karen says that that advice is so important, and Ken says thank you. And Fran wants to know what it's baluster, not baluster.
Oh, baluster is it's the post in the staircase that holds the handrail. You see them lined up along the stairs, and the handrail goes down into it. And as an architectural turner, I've done, like I had one job in one house in Cambridge, 1,500 balusters. So I do them all by hand. So that took me quite a while, but your skill level really improves after that.
I always remember you because I've seen many of your artist presentations at Peters Valley on the Friday nights at the church. And so you have this photo with like a giant, it must be more like a column, but it was like the biggest turned thing.
And which is really easy. And this is like really funny. People are like, holy moly, you just made that 8-foot column. And it's exactly like turning one simple spindle. Like if you knew how to turn a simple spindle, you could turn that column. There's really nothing impressive about it. The only thing impressive is the woodworking to cooper it up, because they have to be hollow so they don't break. That's the only knowledge that you really would need to know. So often when you challenge yourself, you say, oh, this wasn't as hard as I thought it would be.
So Rick says it doesn't become tedious. Is he talking about the 100 whatever?
Oh, he's talking about 1,500. Rick, I got to tell you this. Everybody goes, you must be so bored. I have never been bored, because each baluster or each thing I'm turning, even if I'm turning 1,000, I'm thinking, wow, how can I sharpen this tool better? Wow, could there be a better tool for this? And then I say, oh, look at this grain. Why is this one so easy to turn? And the last one was a bear. And I compare them and put them side by side and say, oh, this grain is really straight and this grain is not. So I feel like even now I learn so much. And then when you stack up 1,500 balusters, it's like a monolith, and it's a beautiful sculpture. And it makes you start thinking about sculpture. Like, oh, wow, what if you did this project that was about many things becoming one big thing? And so I'm always inspired by my daily tradesperson labor, has always really inspired my artwork.
I love that. Any other questions? It is a little after 12, but if we've got a few more questions, please type them in the chat. Well, people have just been loving getting this a glimpse into your world, and that Renee says your work is exquisite and your philosophy is applicable to life. So she thanks you very much.
Awesome. Thank you all for coming. It's so weird. I've been here in the Ireland compound for 9 months now, since I left Maine last year. And it's like, really, this Zoom thing, I just started teaching some Zoom classes. And I thought, I don't know, how is it going to be to teach a class where you can't see people touch things? And what it really has been great, because it's like having company. So it's been really great for that. So thank you for taking the time to visit.
A couple more quick questions. So, well, Pam says she'd love to see the cabinet doors. Carol wants to know if you're coming back to Peters Valley when we're able to come together.
I guess it would depend on if I'm asked.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening for next year. But Beth will definitely be back at Peters Valley.
For people who are interested, next year I'll be at Center for Furniture Craftsmanship, Haystack, Port Townsend School of Woodworking, Arrowmont, Penland. So I'm all over the country. So there's always a class somewhere.
And Carrie asked, where's your shop in Maine?
I don't have a shop in Maine. I teach the professional wood turning program at the Center for Furniture Craftsmanship. So basically the whole school is my shop for 2 months, and I try to use it as much as possible. And then, of course, don't forget, come to beautiful Florida and take lessons also.
Any other questions? Well,
Thank you all.
Thank you
It was
so
great to see
much.
familiar faces.
Like I said, we'll put this up on YouTube and we'll send you an email about that. You can shop Beth's collection of work till the end of December, and we'll send you that coupon. And thank you again all for joining us. So have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.